Your son is glancing towards the US military. Oh my God, I don't want that for him. I understand that. Recruitment for the US military in the US is really, really weird. It's a weird culture. Aren't they in schools recruiting? Like recruiting little children in schools? Isn't that fucking weird? So many things about the US is to Americans like normal, but to anyone outside, it's kind of fucking weird. Pledge of Allegiance is one of the, I keep saying it. It's one of the weirdest things ever. Pledging allegiance to a flag. Children doing it. Come on. Yeah, there you go, Magna. Magna wrote it as I was saying it. Am I the only one who thinks the Pledge of Allegiance is weird? How you say it? For those who don't know, let's do a bit of sociology or social analysis of the American people. A lot of people don't know this about America. We just laugh at them, which is good. But they do this. As an American, you might see this and find that normal. And I'm here to tell you it's not.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's so sad though. It's it's like if it was like, you know, grown ass adults doing it, like fine, but it's like it's children doing it. And as Haltosa says, we just did the pledge in school. I never knew what it was. There you go. It's like it makes it even more pernicious, right? It makes it even more scary. It's creepy. It's fucking creepy. It's the kind of shit that you would see in like North Korea, right? It's exactly what you imagine when you think a North Korean school. They get like that, and then they look at their flag, and then they are, you know, they're told to pledge the allegiance or whatever. And Krenna says, yeah, I was the kid in the back sitting down silently. Yeah, because you're allowed to not do it, right? I wonder if there's social pressure to do it, though. There has to be. Dortalk says, look at that class of little dictators own. I don't think they're dictators. I think they're just subjects, right? Like to like, at least that's if not authoritarian, it's an authoritarian culture. You have something similar in Mexico, Aldzerge. I'm sorry to hear that. Wilson Zombie says they didn't do it and they got dirty looks for it. And especially when you're a child, right? You don't want dirty looks. You're allowed to not do it, but you're never directly told that. One of my Bible college professors, professors, gave a talk about the importance of indoctrination. Of course. You know how I love to talk about biology. Children are biologically designed to not have critical thinking. They're biologically designed to absorb all information that comes to them. Because these motherfuckers know nothing about the world. And because they know nothing about the world, and we have big brains, when we're young, we just absorb everything. That's why you can make a child believe anything. You can make them believe anything. And because they're just taking information all the time. There's so much information to take. There's no way they can analyze all this information about the world that they're learning every single day. So indoctrination for children is one of the best times to make them, believe in specific values, specific ideas, specific myths that otherwise they wouldn't believe in when they'd be older, right? We can talk about that for nationalism and capitalism and all that. Perhaps they could believe it when they're older, right? They could deconvert from whatever they initially think and agree with capitalism and nationalism and all that, but through a lot of convincing and a lot of arguments, right? And perhaps they won't even buy into it. But if you're taught at a young age that, be proud of your country and love your country and all that, without the arguments, then you'll just learn it, without actually knowing the arguments for it. You might believe in that without actually knowing why you believe in it, which is the most pernicious kind of belief. Because when you believe in something without knowing why you believe it, you might not have the ability to actually criticize it because you don't even know how you've got into it or which arguments got you into it. Because if you're convinced into a position, you know which arguments convinced you into a position, or which arguments led you to take that position. And therefore, you can also examine these arguments, or you can have them defeated or at least challenged by other people. But how do you challenge someone who believes in God because they were told that God existed when they were 4, 5, 6 years old? Which arguments can you defeat? There's no arguments. Had these Christians, when they were children, had not been told about Jesus, God, and the Bible, had they only been told about Jesus, God, and the Bible when they were in their 20s, then arguments would have been necessary to make them believe in God, Bible, and Jesus. And those arguments might have not been as efficient, or might have not been as convincing than they might be when they're 5 years old. You don't even need arguments when they're 5 years old. You just tell them something and they believe it. If someone believes in God when they're in their 20s, there's arguments that make them believe in God, and it might be easier to have a discourse about their beliefs because they were convinced by arguments. If someone believes in God because they were told they would believe in God at 5 years old, they don't have arguments necessarily for their beliefs, which makes it really, really hard to push them to think about it. So it makes for very, very child indoctrination is actually, as your Bible college professor says, halitosis, there's an importance to indoctrination, especially when they're children, because it makes for followers who very often are very loyal and dedicated, and who don't even have the ability to criticize what they believe in, because they don't have arguments. They weren't convinced by arguments. They were convinced by, as if it was a natural fact of the world. Yeah, it's just in general very weird. At least I find it to be. But it's good to be able to see it from an outsider's perspective. I think it's important to communicate how weird it is from an outsider perspective to Americans, because many people will live their lives without ever questioning how weird the Pledge of Allegiance is, unless someone says, "Hey, that's the kind of thing that I imagine happening in North Korea. It's weird to see it in a country that claims to be free."